now, because I thought of presenting also Gottfried Semper, by the way of Konstantin Lipsius, who studied with an architect who followed Gottfried Semper at the university he studied in Germany. I will present now, and it is a pleasure for me because I truly believe Gottfried Semper was an extremely important architect and theoretician. So he was, around 30 years, no, 20 something years younger than, I mean, older. Gottfried Semper was older than Konstantin Lipsius. But after all, 20 something years is not so much. So he is considered one of the great masters of the 19th century German architecture. But I would say his fame and impact went beyond Germany by far. So this was the man. He was a friend of the great composer Richard Wagner, and he himself looks like a tumultuous intellect and man. He was involved in some revolutionary activities, and because of them, he was forced to flee Germany, to go in exile in Austria, in Vienna, and in Switzerland, in Zurich. He even built some buildings for the famous school, architecture school in Zurich, ETH or ETH. Truly one of the best architecture schools in the world. So Gottfried Semper, here he is as a statue, and so he began his professional career as a mathematician, as other architects did, introduced to architecture by Franz Christian Gau and Jacques Ignace Hittorf, and then began work in Dresden, Germany, and then took part in the Dresden uprising, and then he had to flee Germany, published the 4 Elements of Architecture, and I will talk a little bit about that book. A leading architectural theorist of 19th century on polychromy and polychromy in antiquity, later worked in Zurich, Switzerland, and Vienna, Austria. And in Vienna, he built, some extremely important buildings. Gottfried Semper. I like the fate of this button here. It looks like he was not, taking too much care about such matters. It's okay. But it surprises me because I know I might be wrong here. Something is wrong because the button is here. Here should be a hole, no? But then what is this? It looks like a fallen button. It's strange. Anyway, so this is the man. He does look like a determined revolutionary, and strange his coat, because his coat is like, something rural about it. It's almost like peasants who used to wear in Munții Apuseni, the Apusen Mountains in Romania. And here he is, one of the major architects of Europe and the world, dressed after all not much differently. Anyway, some drawings by Gottfried Semper. He drew a lot, lots of renderings, lots of pages in the books he published about style and about the 4 Elements of Architecture. He was very interested in and made some discoveries. For example, the antique, the German, the Greek temples were not white, were highly polychromatic. So he understood the value of color more than some of us in the present understand, unfortunately. The color was always present and it was a sign of life. But in the name of whiteness, of minimalism, and I don't know what, some of us reject color, and I don't understand why. What can you imagine a world that was gray, where the sky was gray, the trees were gray, the grass was gray, everything was gray? No, it would have been inconceivable, and it's not something to contemplate. He also, not only that he had a great interest in color, but he also had a great interest in ornament. As you can see, something, again, some people don't even talk about, as if ornament never existed, which is not true at all. When will the schools of architecture reconsider their relationship with ornament? At least some in some countries. You know, if you deprive architecture of ornament, you deprive architecture of a significant portion of the history of architecture. It's just like this. Say goodbye to ornament and you say goodbye to a very large percentage of world's history of architecture. Anyway, color, no. Ornament, no. Well, if we say no to both, again, we say no to a very large portion of the history of architecture. And not the least important. He had an interesting knots and seam and twinning, and you'll understand why. Because he thought that weaving was the first architectural gesture. Weaving, yes. Here are studies of knots. The knot is also related to ornament and to the world as a labyrinth. If I am to use the title of a very nice book by Gustave René Hoche, a book which was published in Romania, translated, a very nice book. I recommend you that book with great warmth. Ornaments, ornaments and color, color and ornaments, 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 and so on. Now we arrive at this book that he published, The Four Elements of Architecture. And this is a very interesting theory that he had. He asked himself, how did the first building in the world ever came into being? How was it built, the first house? And he said that it was like this. Some hunters and fishermen returned from work. There was no house yet. And they gathered around fire. They had fire, but there was no house. And they understood they had to protect that fire. That fire was crucial for their survival. So they didn't have construction elements around them. So how to protect fire? They understood that they had to protect it in various ways. At the bottom, so they conceived a platform to elevate the fire a little bit, but the fire generated the hearth, vatra in Romanian. And they had to enclose fire with a wall, but how to make that wall? So they removed some vegetable material from bushes and trees, and they began to weave them. That's how this is what Gottfried Semper thought, that the first wall, maybe the word is a little bit inadequate, a malleable wall, a flexible wall, a panel essentially, made of weaving branches of trees, of bushes, whatever they were able to take from nature. And so his idea was that the first house ever built had four elements: the hearth, which was vatra in Romanian, the hearth, then the roof, carpentry, the enclosure, which was weaving, and the mound, which was stonework. And so this is a book, The Four Elements of Architecture, is a book by the German architect Gottfried Semper. It was published in 1851, and it is an attempt to explain the origins of architecture through the lens of anthropology. The book divides architecture into four distinct elements: the hearth, the roof, the enclosure, and the mound. The origins of each element can be found in the traditional crafts of ancient so-called barbarians. The hearth, metallurgy and ceramics; the roof, carpentry; the enclosure, textile and weaving; and the mound, earthwork. Semper stated that the hearth was the first element created, and I quote from him, "The first sign of a settlement and rest after the hunt, the battle, and wandering in the desert is today, as when the first man lost paradise, the setting up of the fireplace and the lightning of the reviving, warming, and food preparing flame. Around the hearth, the first groups formed. Around the hearth, the first groups assembled. Around it, the first alliances formed. Around it, the first rude religious concepts were put into the customs of a cult." And Semper continues, "Throughout all phases of society, the hearth formed that sacred focus around which took order and shape. It is the first and most important element of architecture. Around it were grouped the other three elements: the roof, the enclosure, and the mound, the protecting negations or defenders of the hearth's flame against three hostile elements of nature." Even Frank Lloyd Wright thought the same thing, that in the center of the house, it was supposed to be fire, the hearth, the chimney. Always in his domestic architecture, Frank Lloyd Wright placed at the center, not necessarily the geometrical center, but the heart of the domestic architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright was the hearth, vatra. And here we see this is the hearth, then the enclosure, which is woven. You see here the textile work, the carpentry, the roof, and the platform. The house, the first house, was elevated a little bit from the earth to protect the fire, symbolized by the hearth, from flooding and animals and so on. You see here the four elements of architecture. The origins of each element can be found in the traditional crafts of ancient society. The hearth, fire and ceramics. It was done with ceramics. And the roof is done with carpentry. The enclosure is weaving. This is very, very important. The enclosure is weaving. And he thought that was the first architectural gesture that the first man, human being, did. And then the mound, the stone masonry. And a student actually sent me this diagram he discovered, and it's a great diagram because it shows that all the words, all the derivations of the word architecture or architect come from texts, which in the Proto-Indo-European language means to weave. So actually, to weave generated all the words having to do with architecture in various languages. This is very, very interesting, and Semper had a lot to do with this. I don't know if he knew this diagram. This was not from his book, but this diagram confirms what he stated. Very, very important. Weaving, actul de a țese, weaving is the primal architectural gesture. Now, some of his buildings, because he built, and not insignificantly. This was destroyed in 1869. It was a theater, an ample building, but it was rebuilt. So this was destroyed by fire. This is the destiny, unfortunately, often of many buildings. Fire destroys. Fire gives birth, but fire also destroys. So this is also in Dresden, where we saw what Constantin Lipsius built. Villa Rosa, 1839, destroyed in the Second World War. A graceful villa, what can we say? Too sad that it was destroyed. He built a synagogue which was destroyed in 1938, the Kristallnacht. What can we say? The madness of human life seems to be with us forever. Oppenheim Palace, 1845, 1848, again by Gottfried Semper, an architect I admire, and I admire him both for his theoretical studies and for his built work. Yes, it was the 19th century, it was an eclectic century, but we cannot ignore Gottfried Semper, no way. The Semper Gallery, the Dresden Gemälde Gallery, 1847, 1855. As I said, Dresden suffered during the Second World War, but we'll see buildings by Semper in Vienna and in Zurich, in Switzerland. And what can we say? You know, here you had a major force in architecture who, when he was forced to leave Germany, he found refuge in Switzerland and in Austria, and he built very significantly. In Vienna alone, he has 4 buildings, and 3 of them quite large and remarkably important for the capital of Austria. So this was not a peripheral or peripherical figure in the history of architecture. It was one of the major architects of the 19th century Europe, and thus the world. And his discoveries in the field of theory of architecture are highly significant. Again, he underlined the importance of polychromy, meaning color, color, and again color, and also the importance of ornament, ornament, ornament. But, you know, the modern Orthodox purist would say nonsense. It is not nonsense. color and ornament always existed in architecture, always from the very beginning, including from the first scribbles on the walls of the caves. There were spirals there which were of an ornamental nature. Why did ancient men, almost before history, wanted to scribble the walls of the cave in such a way? Why? There must have been a reason. Now this is the theater as it was rebuilt in Dresden, and after the fire destroyed the first one. And it is it is a big building. It is maybe, in terms of aesthetics, you would say is a busy building. It's not very impressive because it's not modern. Yes, it is not so-called modern, but obviously it meant something for the place it was built for, since they rebuilt it after the first one was ruined by fire. He built one in Vienna, not in a way similar to this one, and we are going to see it. I like old photographs, sorry. Now, whatever Le Corbusier might have said that, when the cathedrals were white, I said this before and I will say it again. I doubted that they were ever white, because stone only sometimes is white, usually it is gray. And yes, the patina could also come because of the passage of time, but I doubted that the cathedrals were, totally white at the beginning, as he thought. I hope he changed his mind later on in life. The lover of purity. Here is Gottfried Semper, his statue with, some drawing, a plan probably in his hands, in Zurich, because he had to leave Dresden because he participated in a revolution. And this is usually the destiny of revolutionaries. They have to save themselves by leaving the place they fought for. The Polytechnical School, ETH, in Zurich, a very famous architecture school in the world, one of the best. So he built some buildings there, 1858, 1864. What can we say? It's a very forward-looking school, but the building belongs to Semper. And I like this conjunction between new interventions and the old room. And, it's a good cohabitation, I think, between color and ornament and new technology. And it shows, of course, it's a well-to-do school in a well-to-do country. Gottfried Semper, Zurich. Now, I understand in a way this historicist architecture could be a little bit, tiring for us because we are accustomed to simplicity. But, is life so simplistic to be approximated with white cubes forever and ever and ever? I doubt it. And I believe this hallway is impressive. He built also an observatory in Zurich, and we are going to see it. 1861, 1864. With this one, I struggled a little bit because I think this is the one, but there is another observatory, and I'm not very sure that. I think this is the one built by him. Interestingly, he brought ornamentation even into such a building, which is, you know, rather scientific in nature. But embroideries, I think, if they are done skillfully, they are never a nuisance. Winterthur, a city hall. He built a city hall in this town. Yes, it's classicist, but I think it has some virtues. It's a small city hall, but I think it's interesting. Switzerland again, as you can see from the flag, 19th century, Gottfried Semper. Vienna. Now in Vienna, as I said, he built 4 buildings, and those who know Vienna a little bit will recognize immediately at least 2 of them, if not 3 of them. The 4th one, though, which is maybe the most remarkable, is less known. And even myself, I was unable to visit it, although I went several times to Vienna. First, we'll start with the municipal theater from 1873 to 1888, which is kind of similar to the one he built in Dresden. This is the one. As opposed to the one in Dresden, this one was not consumed by fire. So we are looking at the building as he built it once and for all. In Dresden, as you remember, the first one he built was damaged by fire, and then he built a new one in its place. So this is the municipal theater. I hope I have a plan here, because there are a significant number. There is a significant number of stairs there, which is kind of interesting. Vienna, mon amour, I love Vienna. And look here, just look here, the plan. I mean, it's a society, it's a cluster of stairs. All this, you know, this part of the building at the entrance is populated with stairs. Very interesting. Of course, the functionalists would protest, would say, why would we need so many stairs? Well, you know, it's a large public building with I don't know how many people attending a performance, but it's an interesting idea, and you know, an interesting plan, and also the fact that there are various aesthetical crystallizations for the stairs, you know, all different or almost all. This one is identical with this one, this one with this one, but then these 3 are different. Kind of a unique plan. And of course, there are other stairs, you know, in the building. But this enfilade of stairs is, and there are also 2 here. So let's count: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stairs. In fact, this is probably the largest concentration of and density of stairs in the world in such a space. Interesting. Anyway, and you wouldn't expect it when you look at the facade of the building, that behind this facade, you know, a generous amount of stairs will invite you upstairs or downstairs. Anyway, so this is Vienna, and across the street here is the City Hall of Vienna, where they have in the summer great festival, a great festival with films where you can watch film outdoors, projected on a huge screen and so on. Now, the Kunsthistorisches Museum, there are two museums that he built, one for art and one for science, natural science. And this is for art, and a very rich building, as you can see. In between the two buildings, they are almost identical and parallel, and in between them is the statue of the great Empress Teresa. And so we are in the heart of the great city of Vienna, and I'm nostalgic. And look at the building by Gottfried Semper. Ornaments and color, yes, they do exist. They do exist in architecture, and to dismiss them is to dismiss again and again a great portion of the history of architecture. The schools of architecture that banish ornament and color, they don't know what they are doing. But try to eliminate ornament and color, and then what do you get? You know, we are obsessed with space, 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 and again space. But architecture is not just about space. I'm sorry. You know, you could have a great building with a great space, but if there isn't something else, it's just space. I'm not so sure is entirely satisfying. Not to speak about the participation of the other arts, of course, which again we banish. No art, no sculptures, no frescoes, nothing, just white walls, bare walls. Now, this part, you know, the courtyard of the building, yes, is rather, you know, bare, but it's a courtyard, you know, with some maybe without much glory. Is a service courtyard in a way, but even here you have the presence of art to an extent, at least. But inside, as you can see, there is a richness which is for all to see, and I would say inspirational. And the artworks themselves seem to be stirred up. Look at the complexity of the plan. Again, try to eliminate ornaments if you can. The room begins to sink as it grows towards the skylight. This is what is happening here. Yes. So this is a model of the great museum, and then we'll see the other one. You know, these two major buildings that he built there right in the heart of Vienna are part of the glory of this glorious city. So the second museum is the Museum of Natural History. We saw the Museum of Art, of History of Art. Now we see the Museum of Natural History, and which is almost identical with the one we saw, except that it is dedicated to natural history, with a great empress in between them, as I mentioned already. And here again, we have architecture saying yes to the art of construction, saying yes to plastic arts, and they are inseparable. Now, in the other one, we have the beast called art. Here we have the beast called dinosaur or whatever. You know, it's in a way they are both beasts. Some people think that art is a beast, and in a way it is. Yes, it's a beast which tells us the truth, but it also tells us to endure and to it gives us hope. In a curious way, maybe. Because sometimes art seems to say no to life, but it actually honors life in a paradoxical way. It is art that moves life on through its power of anticipation and through its restless quest for what is not seen usually. So these two buildings by Gottfried Semper are major structures in Vienna built by the German, not the Austrian, the German Gottfried Semper. Arrived in Vienna flying from, fleeing from Dresden. So we see here the two buildings, this one and this one. One is the Museum of Art, the other one is Museum of Natural Science. And in between them, the great Empress Teresa. Here they are, Gottfried Semper, Gottfried Semper. And actually the municipal theater is not far away from here. But we'll see also the fourth building, which is in appearance a more modest building, but I think exactly because of that, perhaps more modern and striking and interesting is this one, the Semper Depot in Vienna, which belongs now to the Academy of Fine Arts. And look at this. I like this building very much. It's indeed modern. It has, because it was a building that, it was a depot, no? Kind of a storage, but now it's part of the, as I mentioned, part of the university, the Academy of Fine Arts, which also has a department of architecture and quite good. Hans Hollein, about whom I talked a few days ago, he was trained in the Academy of Fine Arts. And these are the plans, very nice plans. In a way, the building site with its peculiarity provoked, an unusual architecture. So this is the fourth building by Gottfried Semper in Vienna. And the drawings, they are as they are, but the pictures show a building that is very interesting. And this is mainly because of the unusual shape of the site. Maybe some students here now remember when I said that structure in itself is not sufficient. When structure assumes also some aesthetical potentialities, when it assumes aesthetics, it becomes relevant and rich. And this is what we see here. These are structural elements, no, but they are sensitively done. There is grace. Thus, they are not turning their back on aesthetics. And this is felt in the building. Towards the outside, but even towards the outside, I think is a good building. It has this clarity and is something almost from the Renaissance here, but with a modernistic touch. The interior, though, is the one that impresses me the most. And here it is. You see these columns? These columns are structural, but they are not indifferent to aesthetics. You can tell that they are crafted by a designer. They are done in a certain way. Thus, they contribute also to the beauty of the building, not just to sustain the building, but also to give it, aesthetical qualities. So even if you see here, you see some drawings of these columns. They are excellent. They are sensitive. There is gracefulness, and there is a quest here for the aesthetical value of these structural elements. The art of the joint. No, I mean, the joint is important. And I remember again that title that Kenneth Frampton used when he talked about Carlos Scarpa, the adoration of the joint. We see something similar here, the adoration of the joint, what is going on here, bringing together all these elements in a meaningful way and aesthetically pleasing way. Otherwise, the building is not, is not a complicated building, but it has gracefulness. This is what I'm trying to say. It has grace, even if it is a rather, prosaic building in the sense that if it was meant as a depot, but now they have all kinds of, shows there, and it belongs to the Academy of Fine Arts. And it's a building that has an intrinsic nobility. And I even in pictures, I like these columns. They, there is a little bit of history or historicism here, but mainly I would describe them as having grace. They are graceful. This parapet actually is very familiar to me because the house I grew up in Sibiu there is a balcony there. It's like a exterior corridor which goes to an attic, and it has a parapet very similar to this one, almost identical. But then, Sibiu was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then there were influences, of course, coming to. Anyway, I love this building, and I can only imagine studying in this building. The Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna. Looking upwards towards the ceiling. Not bad. Not bad, Gottfried Semper. Thank you. Okay, that was it today. It was not the longest presentation today, but we paid homage to Constantin Lipsius, and we talked a little bit about Gottfried Semper.